This week on Dig Me Out, Tim and Jay are joined by 𝘎𝘩𝘵𝘵, Tom Mullen, and Louise Post of Veruca Salt for a roundtable discussion on bands reuniting.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Dig Me Out. I'm your host, 𝘎𝘩𝘵𝘵, and joining me once again, my co-host, Mr. Jason Ziak. Jay, it is episode 217 of Dig Me Out. We are in season 5, and we are in our March roundtable, Jay. Are you excited?
I am excited. This is going to be a big one.
This is going to be a big one. This is a big... We did Britpop roundtable for February, and we had our albums of 1995 for January. So this month we decided to cover bands reuniting, and this is something that's happened quite frequently over the last couple of years. Bands getting back together from the 90s and late 80s. I'm going to throw that in there since we're going to be talking about, some bands that existed in the 80s as well. Some of the returns have been extraordinary. Some of them have been not so great. We're going to talk about what it takes for a band when they come back to, does it have to be just a tour? Does there have to be an album involved? What criteria makes us happy when a band decides to get back together?
Sure.
So to do that, we have an interesting roundtable discussion that's going to go on. Returning from many episodes before, a returning champion, Mr. 𝘎𝘩𝘵𝘵𝘵, proprietor of kidsinterviewbands.com. Chip, how are you?
I'm good, and I'm glad you didn't say weighing in at.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would not have responded well to that.
Chip, I need to know the college that you attended. You say 𝘎𝘩𝘵𝘵𝘵, and then you say the college.
Ohio State University.
Excellent. We're going to do this NFL style. Joining us from the Washed Up Emo podcast, Mr. Tom Mullen. Tom, how are you?
Fantastic.
And your college?
What a day. My college. The college that it's called now, or when I went?
Or you went?
Elon College in North
Elon
Carolina.
College. Okay.
I went there before they accepted, they had like this smart person level, and I got in before they had that, so I'm good to go.
Cool. And then also joining us for the first time, we have a rookie on our panel. I don't know from where. I was going to say Chicago, but that probably might not be right anymore. I'm not sure. Joining us from the band Veruca Salt, Louise Post. Louise, how are you this evening?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. So you have
when
a band.
When do I say the college?
Oh, what college? Yes, sorry.
You screwed that.
Barnard College.
Awesome. I have Bowling Green State University, and so does Jay. So, although Jay, you had some. What was it? What was your community college before that?
Lorain County Community College.
Yes, LCCC. The vaunted.
I think I watched the game on ESPN3 earlier today.
Yeah. They have a hell of a curling team. Anyways, I want to start out by asking, since we have a guest who happens to be in a band that has reunited in the last couple of years, I wanted to ask a couple questions. First of all, Louise, in reforming the band, it's been since 2013 that the band has been back together, so it's been a couple years. What was the catalyst for that happening?
Well, in 2012, way back then, I got an email from my former partner and bandmate Nina Gordon, saying, Mazzy Star is playing Coachella. Why don't we? And we had been in touch over the years, but we hadn't seen each other in 14 years. And so we just were gun shy, and we live in the same city. We live in Los Angeles, but we hadn't pulled the trigger and gotten together. And we hadn't talked about playing music together ever, not since we broke up. And in 1998, so she made the first move, and I said, why don't we get coffee first? And we ended up having dinner and shutting down the restaurant. We had so much to say and so much to catch up on, and there were tears, and there was a lot of explaining and a lot of just talking. They had to kick us out. And then a couple months later, we got together with our rhythm section, Jim Shapiro and Steve Lack, who one who was visiting and one who lives close to LA in San Diego County. And we did the same thing. We shut down the restaurant and we all, whoever had the table had to apologize. Whoever had the floor had to make an apology for something, whether it was like throwing a shot glass at someone's head or leaving the band too early or, a variety of things. It kind of like ran the gamut. And it was hilarious and awesome and like a family reuniting. And we decided that night that we'd do something. We didn't know if it was like play a show, play American Thighs from front to back, and maybe record something. We didn't know. We had no idea, but we decided we would do something. And that was August in 2012. And then we started recording our record in the following June. Actually, I'm sorry, was that right? Oh God. Yeah, I guess so. We just finished, so it's a blur, but we've been working really hard for a long time.
So when you sat down that first time, there were no expectations. It was just, let's try to do some stuff and we'll see what happens. It wasn't like, let's do a single and then see how that goes or anything like that.
Oh God. No, we didn't have that much foresight. I don't think we dared plan that far in advance. We were just like, can we all have dinner? Can we all get to the next stage and do the next step? And really, I think what was true and what was evident was that everyone wanted to do something. Everyone was game. Everyone was available. Everyone was going to do whatever it took to do it. And that was really what mattered. We didn't know what that was going to be, and I don't know that we intended to make a new album. We'd all Nina and I had both shelved music because we had become moms and we had young children, and we were just not really playing music. And all of a sudden we got together, we played a couple songs from American Thighs, and it was lovely. And singing harmony together, for us, that's the ultimate. And singing together is incredible for us. And we hadn't done it in so long, so it was quite profound. And then very soon after that, we were kind of bored and like, all right, what do you got? Let's do something new. And it really gave way to a huge, like a new chapter of songwriting for both of us. And we inspire each other the same way we did when we made our first few albums together, if not more. I mean, we're sort of on fire right now. And we started writing and building momentum. And I came in with a song one day that she made her realize that we were actually making a record. And she did the same for me. She kept coming in with these great songs, and I realized, oh shit, we're making a record here. Can I say shit on a podcast?
There are no rules.
Okay.
The FCC doesn't control us.
Okay.
You can drop F-bombs, whatever you want to do.
How liberating.
Yes.
So, unless you guys hold it against me personally, it's all good. So anyway, so it's just been this incredible journey thus far. And you didn't ask me about all that, but I went on and on and on.
No, that's great. When did you decide to do the Record Day single that came out? I think it was a 7-inch that came out with the 2 new songs. Was that shortly after you started doing a few shows, or did you go, hey, or were you approached by them? How does that work in terms of putting out a single for Record Store Day?
So what happened was Nina and I got together and we started playing like in her basement quietly, as we did in the beginning. We got together, we met in Chicago, and we started playing together. And then we met Steve Lack, who would drive up from the south side of Chicago and play with us on the north side of Chicago. And it was like, and then he would come up a couple times a week, and it was exactly the same way. Then Steve rejoined, driving up from San Diego. And then eventually Jim rejoined, and he had to come out from Chicago. He's actually commuting to be in this band. It's kind of crazy. But he is definitely like in Chicago and can't move out here. So that's just the way it is. That's what we have to work with. But that's how it happened the first time around. And our original label, Minty Fresh in Chicago, got in touch with us and suggested that we do something, and specifically for Record Store Day. And we had been recording, so when we first started, we had some songs, and we thought Brad Wood, who had recorded a bunch of our favorite bands in Chicago at the time, we thought he was the bee's knees, and we wanted to work with him really badly. And he was at our first show, and he actually introduced us to Minty Fresh, Jim Powers of Minty Fresh. And so as it happens, Brad Wood is out here, and I just said to the band, like, should we? I mean, do we know what he's doing? Like, you think, should I approach him on Facebook? Like, I don't know. And so I did. And I said, we're putting out a single on Minty Fresh for Record Store Day. Is it any weirder to think we might record it with you? Because that's how we released Seether, was on Minty Fresh. And Brad Wood had recorded it. We just released a 7-inch. And he's like, I'm in. And those were the words I needed to hear. And that was just as it was with American Thighs. We went into it thinking, we're just going to record a couple songs. And 16 songs later, we are we are as reunited as a band can be. We toured the States last summer. We toured Australia in the fall. And then we got back into the studio and recorded 5 more songs for the record. And now we are done. The record we're working on a release date right now. And we're going to be touring again this summer. We don't have the dates yet, but that's the plan. And that's how it all went down.
He's a cheater, a bottom feeder. In this box, a lot of his hair. Jubilation, he loves me again. Ha la la, I don't care. Ha la la, I don't care. Ha la la, ha la la, ha la la, I don't care.
So when you were looking at this process again, were there any bands that have reunited in recent years you thought, oh, they did it right? Like, they put out a record, they toured behind it, they're not just going out as like a nostalgia act and just playing old songs over and over again. They're actually making new records, putting out new material for the fans. Or was it just like, we're going to do it our own way and I don't care how anybody else has done it?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm aware of a lot of other bands that have reunited and how they've done it. I know My Bloody Valentine put out a good record. Mm-hmm. I know they worked on it forever. And I saw them in 2008, so that was their reunion, really. And then the record didn't come out for many more years. So that's not really an example I would use. But I have to, since you've mentioned that whole phenomenon of reuniting and being perceived as a nostalgia band or not, depending on if you're releasing new stuff, it's been a really strange year for us because last summer we had finished our record, or so we thought, and we were doing a tour, but we had only put out 2 songs, and we were waiting to just dial in the release. We wanted to set it up right, and we just had some stumbling blocks, like with our management, and we couldn't quite get everything set up the right way that we wanted to. And as that happened, we realized, oh my God, we want to add a couple more songs to this album to fill it out in a way that we wanted to see it. And so we've been sitting on this record now for a year. Now it's bigger and broader, but we're still being perceived as a band that is just reunited and hasn't released much, Mm-hmm. And so I feel like we're sitting on this big, wonderful secret, and I cannot wait to unleash it on our fans. I can't wait. It's driving me crazy. And I think I could fairly say it's driving my whole band crazy, because we definitely are not a nostalgia band. We have a full record, ready to come out of the gates.
Let me throw it out to the panel now. Do you guys think that bands, when they're reuniting, that shows are enough, or do you really want to see new material? Chip, I'm going to start with you.
So I would say, if it's only shows, they need to come to Ohio. So like Quicksand reunited, they didn't put out anything new, and they didn't come anywhere near. So as far as I'm concerned, like, the reunion I knew about it, but it flew right by me.
It failed the Ohio test.
It did.
Okay.
Absolutely. So I don't know what I'd rather have, like a new record or a tour. I saw Pavement on their reunion tour. They had nothing new to sport, and they were great, and it was fun to see them, having not seen them in so long. But I think that reunion was short-lived.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to happen again based on recent tweets.
So.
Tom, what about you?
No, a band does not have to do that. Case in point, Refused. I was lucky enough to see it in '98 and saw it in their recent tour, and it was 10 times better and bigger, and they didn't have to do anything. Their record stood the test of time. So And they did play more than a few cities, so they played around the world. So that was definitely something. So I don't think it needs to. I think sometimes bands, they get back together and like Mineral, they only knew the songs they knew. So there wasn't going to be time for them to learn new songs or put up stuff because people have children, people have jobs and lives, and they're putting these things. So maybe their tours isn't as long. So that would be it is not necessary.
You know, one thing I'll add to that too is, so I saw Veruca Salt last summer, and what's really cool is, I mean, being my age, most of these bands from the 90s I got to see in the 90s, but, and Louise could probably comment on this, a lot of the people that were at that Bunbury Festival had never seen Veruca Salt, so it was a first time for them, which was really cool.
Louise, you want to chime in about seeing new fans out and how they're reacting, as opposed to just people who have, who are our age, in their 30s and 40s, who we saw you in the 90s and then are maybe catching a second time around. How is the perception different?
I have to say that we're always being surprised. Like there's a whole wave of younger kids who love Veruca Salt, who, were very small when we were out that last time. And so it's interesting. Like, there are definitely people who have not seen us, and that's more reason, that's another argument for touring, just to play your music for more people, the obvious thing. But yeah, I'm certainly aware of people online who have come around to know us over time or just recently are brand new fans. And that's exciting because I, of course, believe that we have something to share. And, I wanted to share my thoughts about whether or not bands should reunite. I mean, it's a cliche that reunion records suck. We all know it. Like reunion, it's like, please don't make it a record. Just play your old stuff when nobody wants to hear it. And our booking agent, who's really dry and very straightforward, sat with us and said, he found us on Facebook and said, do you want to get together? And I'd love to book your tours. And he said, yeah, I would just say go do some shows, but don't bother. Like, we love this guy, but it's so funny that he's just saying, like, don't bother making a record. Like, nobody wants to hear reunion rock and, like any new stuff. And that's, of course, absurd to me and to all of us. But it was funny. But when I saw the Breeders reunion a couple of years ago, I went with Nina, and it was, they were a seminal band for us and hugely influential to the point where we were delighting ourselves by referring to them in our songs, and people took it as us trying to rip them off. And it was all laughable, and we're friends with them. And we went to go see the show, and I was dying for something new. And I ended up, at the end of the show, I asked Nina if one of the songs had been new. And I was like, but there was one new song, right? And she said, no, that was on a B-side. Don't you remember? And so anyway, I'm a fan of hearing new stuff, even if it's, stuff that it doesn't necessarily take over the whole set. Because believe me, I loved hearing all of Last Splash and Pod. But I was, after having heard that, I want to know that an artist is thriving and moving forward. That's what excites me. I love hearing old stuff, but I want to know how they're evolving creatively.
How important was it to you to get all of the original members back?
It was essential.
Do you think that would have harmed the legacy if you were like, well, we got to find a different bass player, so let's get so-and-so from this other band who might be a completely, capable bass player and might even have some sort of a connection to the band, whether you guys toured together. But do you think like that would have tarnished moving forward?
I don't think we would have done it. I really don't. I think Nina and I might have decided to do something else musically together, but we wouldn't have made another Veruca Salt record or toured if all 4 members hadn't been available and wanting and interested, really. It's not something we were like really looking for. It's sort of like it happened, and it was just this big happy accident, and we were also surprised by it.
I'm going to throw this one out to the crowd, and I want to start with you, Jay, because we had this debate when we talked about the new Afghan Wigs record about Rick McCullum not playing on the record. How important do you think it is for at least the majority of the members, if not all of the members, to be back from the lineups that we remember?
It's interesting. Sometimes it's not that important. Other times it is. I think it depends on what defines the sound of the band. For me, it was with the Wigs. It was, it was a lot of Dooley, but it was also the weird guitar playing that Rick McCullum brought to the band, and the slide, and just that element of friction. I think that he brought between what he did and the rest of the band. So to me, that's what defined the Wigs. So without him in it, it didn't work for me as well as it may have worked for some other folks. So. I think it's, how I think you can look at like the Pumpkins, right? I mean, Billy Corgan keeps that band alive, but I think for a lot of people, it doesn't have the same, it just doesn't have the same chemistry or the same passion, or I don't know what, there's obviously something missing there that's not connecting, with all the fans as the way it used to. So I think it depends on what defines the band, and being able to identify, what are those key pieces, and making sure that those are still intact to make sure that it's still them. Right. It's not just a tribute band or something.
Right. I'll throw my 2 cents in on the Pumpkins. I think whenever he plays without Jimmy Chamberlin, it makes a huge difference. There are a lot of capable drummers, but Jimmy Chamberlin is a wholly unique drummer, and nobody does what he does, and that balanced so well with Corgan's songwriting that nobody's been able to follow him. And I honestly have not dedicated a lot of time to the record he did with Tommy Lee, so I'm not entirely sure how that one worked out. I have to listen to it more. Chip, what about for you? Do you need to have all the members back, or is one enough? Like with LA Guns, perhaps.
So I'm thinking hair metal, of course,
right?
As I always do. I think what Jay said, it depends on the band. Seeing the Van Halen reunion tour without Michael Anthony was pretty awesome. I mean, not that it wouldn't have been awesome with Michael Anthony, but I was completely fine without Michael Anthony being there. And as you said, like all the 80s hair metal bands are down to like maybe 1, maybe 2 original people. Mm-hmm. But it goes back, especially with the 80s hair metal, it's like all those bands, we remember them from the lineup that was on MTV. But so many of those bands went through so many different members that if the songs sound the same live, I'm fine with that.
What about you, Tom?
Again, it depends on the band, but I also think each person in each age has a different reaction. I could see someone standing next to me at the Helmet shows that I just went to for the Betty 20th anniversary. It is just the lead singer, guitarist left, but that band had been together for 6 years, so it actually sounded pretty good. Mm-hmm. And there was people there that had never seen them before, and there's me who's old and fudgety and in the back, and enjoying it as well. So I try not to think about it too much. I try to just enjoy it, and thank God that these bands that I love, that I connect to, are still doing something and still getting a paycheck, and people are still buying merch. I kind of want that. If one person is there and gets something out of it, then I'm happy for the band, or I'm happy for that person that was there that never got to see them, or that's their friend just sent them the CD and they haven't been together for 15 years or something. So I'm always happy for that one person.
So I totally agree with that. And I have this discussion a lot with people around bands reuniting, and their, the argument of it's not the original band, therefore it's not worth seeing. I was thinking back, like, I would never go back to my first job just because somebody wanted to see the team back together. I mean, there's other dynamics that happened why I'm not at that job anymore, or in a relationship, or any of those kind of things, that because the fans want it to happen doesn't mean that it has to happen. Doesn't mean that what comes out of it is not going to be good. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let me ask you guys, we'll throw this out to everybody. Are there any, I guess you'd say, Moby Dicks out there, the things you absolutely want to see, but you think are never going to happen? Like, I never thought I'd see the Replacements get back together, but somehow we have the Replacements touring and playing shows and stuff like that. I don't ever expect Uncle Tupelo to get back together. I don't see Jay Farrar and Jeff Tweedy making up ever and putting out a record or touring or anything like that. Are there any bands that you're like, I would pay any amount of dollars to see this? I would chop off a finger. I want to see this band live one last time. Louise, I'll start with you. Is there anybody? It doesn't have to be 90s related. I'm just talking about history of rock and roll, but they still got to be alive. So you can't like choose, the Beatles, obviously, because we don't have all the original Beatles left. But are there any bands out there that you're like, I want to see them?
I haven't seen Led Zeppelin.
Okay, that's a good one.
It could happen. It won't.
It could. I mean, you have who is it? Was it Zach sat in from when they did? Didn't they play together for like a couple of shows?
I think Jason Bonham.
Or Jason Bonham. I was thinking, who's Zach? Who am I thinking that's...
You're thinking of the Who.
The Who.
Oh,
Zach,
okay.
yeah.
Zach Starkey.
Yeah.
Okay. Jay?
I guess 90s wise, for me, it would be Catherine Wheel. I don't think that'll ever happen.
No. I don't even think we're going to get reissues. I think that band just is like, we're done.
Yeah. I think Rob Dickinson's moved on and has other things he's passionate about. And it just doesn't seem like something that he would be interested in doing. But I think I'd love to see it. More importantly, I'd love to see them do a record. It seems like there's a little bit of a shoegaze resurgence going on. And I'd love for them to kind of return to their early mid form and, do a record like that.
Tom, what about you? Any bands that you absolutely want to see?
That are never going to happen?
That are never going to happen?
Jawbreaker. You can put it in the book. Never going to happen.
Yeah, I bet that's a lot of people want that to happen.
It's never going to happen. I had a question for Louise. Do you mind if I break course?
No, go ahead.
No, but I would like to say that we were one of those never going to happen bands. So you never say never.
That was going to be my answer.
Well, that's actually plays into what I was thinking. What I've interviewed bands before, and I've been on the phone with them for a podcast, and they're like, "Yeah, we're never going to reunite." And then 2 years later, it happens. Louise, what was that time? What was that moment? I know that time heals all, but what was that moment when it sort of happened? Like, what was in everybody's head? Or because there's a lot of shit that happens, and there's conversations, and there's issues, and what was that like one moment when you're like, shit, I think we're gonna do this? What was that like? What did that feel like?
It was honestly when I got that email from Nina, and I had a 2-year-old, and I was thinking, I don't know if I'm going to play music anymore. Like, I may make an acoustic record. Maybe I'll do a band under, obviously a different moniker. I was done being Veruca Salt with other members. That was done for me, and I was thinking like I'm not going to give you the band name because who knows? Like, it may end up being like a little side project someday. But I don't know. I wasn't interested in it, and she and I had been in touch, and we sent like birthday emails, and we actually reconnected at one point pretty seriously about family stuff, mainly about motherhood stuff, and then that was the thing that brought our friendship back to life. It was having babies, and then we sort of separated a bit, and I had just thought to myself, I don't think I'm going to make such a big effort anymore because she kind of falls off the map, and I don't know if we're ever actually going to get together. So let's just let it lie, just like let it. And it was sort of like that at that moment that she sent me this email and saying that Mazzy Star was playing Coachella and we should be too. And it was like, for her, it was sudden. I've heard her talk about this now quite a bit. And it was weird. It was like she had this whole, like, the idea of us playing together had not been something she was entertaining, and she was also like deeply immersed in motherhood and early motherhood, and all of a sudden it was like it irked her that Mazzy Star was playing and they had reunited and they were playing Coachella, and she thought, why aren't we doing this? This is stupid. Why don't we get back together and do this? And she really had to spearhead it. And so because of just the dynamic between us and the things that had happened in the time past, and so when she did, I thought right then and there, like, this could happen, and this is happening. Like, whatever it is, we're going to do something together. And then I had lunch with Steve, and I asked him, and he said, I never knew. I thought this day may come someday, and I had no idea what my answer would be, but it turns out it's yes. And and then apparently it turns out that Jim Shapiro, our drummer from the first 2 albums and a half, was had his own regrets. Like, he wished he hadn't left the band when he did. He left the band right after we recorded Eight Arms to Hold You, but before we toured on it. And so we found another drummer, and we toured with Stacey Jones for that whole year. And it just was really clear to us that if Jim wasn't interested, it wouldn't happen, because we had to be the original lineup for it to make sense and for it to be worth doing it. So I think it was really that email from Nina that told me that we're going to go forward with this. And then hearing that both guys were down, were really game to do it, was obviously like the final frontier. And there we were.
That's great. Can you tell when a band is doing it for a paycheck or for the love? I realize the paycheck helps, but when you're watching a band, like when I saw At the Drive-In at Coachella, I could tell it was just they were going through the motions. Can you tell? Sometimes you don't have to name bands, but sometimes I just feel I'm like, that band literally just got the paycheck and went home.
But I got to know what paycheck. Like, where's the paycheck? Because I have not seen it. All right. So
no, but I'm just saying. I think bands at Coachella or those festivals. I mean, they're getting advances. They're getting for those 5 or 6 shows, and then that's it.
I suppose if you're getting a bunch of festival love, and you're just going on a festival circuit, then possibly. But that's something that comes up a lot. Like, are you in it for the paycheck, or are you doing it for the love of the band? And I've yet to see the paycheck, so I'm just wondering what people are talking about.
That answers it.
Yeah, that does.
I'm trying to picture At the Drive-In mailing it in. Like, they're so frantic.
Well, I mean, I actually was just watching a show from 1998 that I witnessed, and someone reminded me that it was online. I watched it. Then I watched the Coachella stuff specifically today, and I realized years had passed, but there was something about it that it just seemed, they were like, when is this over? And that was kind of like, okay, I'm just going to remember 1998.
It's funny that you mentioned that the kids were involved in you and Nina getting back together, because when we had Kelly Scott on not too long ago, he had mentioned that the reason why Failure got back together was essentially because Greg and Ken's kids had play dates, and they started talking about music, and then that turned into playing with Kelly again. And I wanted to know, how does that now affect touring and recording and being in the adult world, and as opposed to being 20 years old or 25 years old, and sort of having that freedom? How much more, or how does that affect things?
Having more responsibilities?
Yeah.
Well, it's wildly different, radically different. And I smile when you bring up Kelly Scott, because I love that guy. And I just want to add that I love that Failure's back together. I saw their show, and I was a huge fan. And that's what led me to him and why I ended up playing with him. And, he is a phenomenal drummer, and I was totally honored to be in a band with him for a period of years. So that being said, you brought up play dates, and as it happens, Nina's and my kids are good friends, and we do have play dates. And in fact, we're able to work together sometimes when someone watches the kids, and we can actually get some work done. And it's so different. It is so different. Like, we're, rather than just living, eating, breathing, sleeping music like around the clock, we're doing that, but with children. So like, it's sort of like being 24/7 parents and being 24/7 musicians. So like, I find myself looking at my daughter, she's talking to me, and I'm writing lyrics as I'm looking at her, like in my head. And I feel like, some parents have guilt because they're at work a lot. And I should say that I do because, I do go to work. I'm in the studio all the time. And she has extra preschool because of it, because I've got to go make this record. I'm a working mom now, but I also have guilt because when I'm with her, it's like, to be corny, like the music just doesn't stop playing. It's still going in my head like a loop. Like whatever song we're recording, whatever song is being workshopped or I'm writing the lyrics for at the moment is on loop in my head. And I'm sitting here with her and with my family. Like, I wish I could say I was present, but I'm not quite present. So it's a big challenge, and schedules are challenging to, pin each other down and make sure that we all get together. And then it's crazy. There's there's school and there are school events and the holidays are a much bigger deal than they used to be. And so it's absolutely different, but it also, I find, in general, while we're on the topic, motherhood has been so liberating. Like, thank God it's not all about me anymore. And I'm not as much of a narcissist. And so it's been a dream in that, 3 of us have kids. One of us has many cats and a wife. And all of us are hopefully a little more mature, and we want to do it right this time. And it's still hard being in a band. Don't get me wrong. It's still hard because we're making a record and we're 4 highly opinionated, creative, like frantically creative people. And what I think makes it better is that we do have these other lives. When you're in your 20s and you're in a band, you just feel like this is my family, this is my livelihood, this is my paycheck, this is hopefully, for some, and this is what I do. And all the stakes are so high, and you're defining who you are and who in this world as an adult. And people better not threaten that. And it may leads to magic for some, and I think it did for us. But now it's like we get to revisit the magic, if you will, while being more grown up, and it's freaking awesome.
When you're going to those school events, does anybody ever double take and go, you look familiar? Do you ever get that and at random places you're not expecting it?
A Baskin Robbins, yes. Baskin Robbins. I've had that with some of the parents, and it's just with the parents. Yes,
it just sounded funny.
I know it's ridiculous, but it's like these particular parents at this preschool, like all around the same age, all like grew up in the 90s, all listened to Veruca Salt at some point, and they're like, holy shit.
Jawbreaker.
You're who? They can't believe it, or they'll be whatever. It's yes, that happens, and it's awkward and weird, and it's also very sweet. It's very sweet to meet people who love my band then, and to be able to tell them what's going on now.
You mentioned about the part about getting over the narcissism and sort of evolving as a person. And I think that's something we hear a lot with bands that reunite in the last couple of years, is that they sort of put their issues behind them and they've matured as people, and all that stuff is, in the past. Do you think that now, with the responsibilities and the wisdom that you've gained, that the way that things ended with Veruca Salt in the 90s and with Nina leaving the band, that would have been different had you had the wisdom that you've gained now? Or do you think that was just going to be a natural course of the band and there was no changing that?
Well, of course it's useless and fruitless to regret, but we've had a hard time with that, because we do feel like we split up prematurely, and we feel like we're making our 3rd full-length album together that we were just about to make before all hell broke loose in our personal lives. And creatively, we were in the pocket, and we were on fire together, and raring to go, and had all these songs that were ready for the next record. And then we fell apart interpersonally, and the band broke up. Technically, she left, but so Jim had already left, and then Steve wasn't comfortable staying, and so on and so forth. So I think we've talked about what could have been different. Like, possibly we could have had managers who suggested, suggested a therapist, or but that didn't happen until like a few years later with Metallica. We had Metallica's managers, so we've been saying like, oh right, they didn't realize that you could bring a therapist into a band until Monsters, and that happened like a few years after. That's the right movie, right?
Yeah, some kind of monster.
Kind of monster. But and then there's like we joke about there's Keith and Mick, who just would have a fist fight and get back to business and make their record. Nina and I just we could have even gone at it with Nerf bats. I mean, or just had a full on like cat fight and just kicked each other's asses and got back to work. But we had to separate because whatever, we had to, and we regret that we had to, because we feel like possibly we could have just avoided a lot of BS and years of like duress and anguish over one another. Although I think that possibly all of that led to some good songs on both of our parts. Nonetheless, it was a nightmare. It was a total nightmare. I lost my best friend. It was an acrimonious breakup of the behind the music variety, and it was shitty. And so we both felt the fallout for many years to come. And while we are obviously all of us the sum of our parts, and we're one cell to be different, our lives wouldn't be as they are now. And I often think like, were anything to be different, my daughter wouldn't be who she is. And that's sort of, for me, that is the poetry of life. Like I to regret anything is absurd. But it is, when we do look back on that time, we like to sort of fantasize about how we could have avoided it. And because now in hindsight, it seems trivial. It seems like something that was manageable, but we didn't have the tools to handle it at the time.
Well, I will say that with Metallica working with a therapist, they put out the worst record of their entire career after that. So maybe that wasn't the best road to go down.
Well, we're making our third, right? Go ahead.
They got rid of the guitar solos for that record. That was the thing, and they made the drums sound like a tin can. So that might have been the better option to not use the therapist.
I'm so happy to be making our third record now, and that's really the happy ending to this story, because now we get to make it.
So you mentioned about this sort of not positive split. I think there are a couple bands that, based on the way that the bands broke up, I never thought that they would get back together. One would be Dinosaur Jr., which I believe ended with Jay Mascis hitting Lou Barlow in the head with a guitar or something like that on stage, and then Lou Barlow was out of the band shortly thereafter. I never expected those two guys to play music together. And the other one was the Pixies, which ended with Frank Black faxing the rest of the band that the band was over. He didn't even call them. This is, 1993. It's not like you could send an email. Like, you're either going to call somebody or apparently you're going to send them a fax. So I'm wondering if anybody has any bands that they're genuinely shocked that this band ever got back together based on the acrimonious history of the breakup. Chip, I'll start with you.
Veruca Salt? No, I don't know. I can't think of any. Yeah, I don't know.
Jay, since Chip didn't have any.
Dinosaur Jr., I agree with that one. Plus, with their biggest success came with Lou Barlow out of the band, and it seemed like Jay Mascis had really taken ownership of that band and defined it. So it was really not only surprising they got back together, but how good the records were that they've done since. And then the second one I would say is Alice in Chains. Just the Lane Staley was he's been so copied, and it almost seemed like impossible to ever resurrect that. And the fact that they have, and they've done it in a way where pretty relevant. They basically did the AC/DC thing. They found another singer who's different enough to have his own identity, but can still do the old songs. So I'm really surprised that they pulled that off.
So if you say Alice in Chains, then I'll say Blind Melon. I mean, because same thing. I never thought after Shannon Hoon died that they would ever get back together, and they all seem to be set in their ways and doing their own thing. And I was completely shocked when they got back together. Not because I don't think they ended it. I mean, obviously it was the death that ended that band,
Right?
And it wasn't like they had a bad breakup. But when Shannon died, those guys all took off to different corners of the U.S. and really just needed a lot of time to kind of get through that. So.
Especially with the singer, it's just they defined the band. So to be able to not only do it, but do it really well is pretty amazing.
Tom, any bands that surprised you?
That's funny enough. Alice in Chains, I got to work that one of their not reunion records, but comeback records. And it was awesome to kind of see them take on those songs that you didn't think they could be resung. And then you're like, holy crap, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So it was, and you could tell the band was excited and, had a different, they were like, wow, we can actually do this and not have any crazy drama. The other one for me was, for this past year, was American football. When they were together, they played maybe 12 shows total to maybe 120 people total. So for them to now play the world and sell out places and 4 nights in New York and playing all over Europe, it's pretty crazy to see one album. They had one album and they're milking that for all it's worth, but they deserve it. That record was pretty influential for a lot of people. So that was something very, very surprising to see.
Another one I'll throw out there is Sleater-Kinney. I was not expecting a new record from them, mostly because Carrie Brownstein's on Portlandia and she seems to be busy with other things. And for them to drop a new record secretively in the midst of releasing the box set was pretty cool. And the fact that it's probably one of the best records they ever did is also pretty cool. Some of the bands that have put out new records have put out ones that have been less than stellar. Have there been any albums by reunited bands that have been disappointments? I'll just throw out there that the Pixies one I thought was a little subpar, was a lot subpar, I'll be honest, compared to earlier material. Anybody got any ones? I'll just throw it out there for anybody that they've listened to the record and went, no, this should not have happened.
I don't know that Soundgarden was subpar at all, but I think I listened to that record once.
Yeah, I so wanted to like that record more than I do.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's bad. It's just maybe my expectations were too high.
Yeah.
Did anyone ever hear the Jane's Addiction reunion album? Because I heard it was bad, and I just couldn't bear to listen.
Guess who had to work it? I had to work that record. Before I was at indie labels. Now I'm at major label stuff, and working with them, it was kind of a weird. It was that was a weird time.
So I'm gonna say that while I don't like it as much as the early stuff. I actually like that Jane's Addiction record quite a bit.
Woof.
Which one are we talking about? What's it called?
Dog shit, I think. Hold on.
Is that the one with the theme song from Entourage? Okay.
It was After Strays. It was
I think it was
After
something with.
Strays?
we're all Googling right now.
I think it's something with Jack Daniels.
It was
The
Great
so
Escape
good.
Artist.
Whoops. Yep.
The Great Escape? I've never even heard of this.
All right, so
Gotta
this
go
is
horror.
I guess this is sort of my point.
Exactly.
I remember
no
Strays.
one would forget. No one would forget Ritual de l'Habitual or Nothing Shocking.
Right.
Oh yeah, the Great Escape Artist. Yeah, this was it.
I got it for $1 out of a used bin, so I got my dollars
Ouch.
worth out of it.
Oh God, that's
we were-
awful.
We were going to an interview, and Perry Farrell was beautiful, super nice, and Dave didn't have a shirt on, of course, and we were somewhere. We needed ID, and he didn't have it, and he was like, "I don't have my ID." I'm like, "Well, I told you we're supposed to be going somewhere. You need to bring your ID to go in there." And obviously, he had no place to put it without a shirt on. And then as we finally get him in, and we're going up this elevator, and he like looks at me, and he's like, "So this is your fault." And I said, "Well, that's
Wow.
thanks," but I'm sure he had a bad day. But he didn't have a shirt on, so maybe he was cold.
I had such a huge crush on him. I mean, I'm sure like every girl. Not now. No, I did. I had such a massive crush when they came out, and I went and saw them. And this is before I started my band, and they were headlining Lollapalooza in Chicago, and I ended up backstage and at this table with him and Eric Avery and their lady friends, and
It's getting good.
yeah. And so I was so starstruck. I was just like struck dumb. I was sort of just sitting there like so awkwardly. And
You didn't
Eric
know what to
Avery
say.
was, I really didn't know what to say. And Eric Avery was so nice. And then I ended up, because somehow I was backstage at this Jane's Addiction show by myself. And I was so completely blown away by this band. I mean, they were my Beatles, you know, they were like, nothing shocking, completely blew me away. And here I was with the band members. I guess this is the most starstruck I've ever been. And now I'm forgetting the name of their illustrious drummer, who
Stephen Perkins
was so rude to me. And that was what I was left with, was just like Stephen Perkins going, like, trying to pass me a joint, or going like, "You want this?" And I'm like, he goes, "Yeah, you do." And I'm like, "No, I don't. I don't really want your like greasy joint. No." Anyway, it was just great. He had this bevy of like babes around him, and he was shirtless too. And anyway, but I just had to interject that, like, it's
Of
such a
course.
crazy crush on Dave Navarro.
I got grounded for Ritual record. My dad took the record for me after I got it in the BMG, 12 CDs for a penny, and he read the lyrics, and he's like, "You're grounded."
You might be the last kid to have been grounded for a record. I don't think that happens
No,
anymore.
definitely not. No, there was more after that. Two Live Crew. God, it was bad.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the
I want
Have
more
to go off on
backstage stories. That's what
Yeah,
I want.
let's
I
go.
want more. I want more of her going up and being like, "Oh my god."
Well, I've got a lot. Where do you want to begin? I don't think we have the time.
That's going to be a
but-
whole separate show. We're just going to do
Yeah.
It's going to be called Backstage Stories with Louise, and she's
No,
just
but-
going to
Alright.
give us a whole bunch of backstage stories.
I'm
But
there.
you know what would be funny is if we all were on too, but never said anything, but
We just
just let
laughed.
her just tell stories and laugh. I think
Like a
that'd be a
studio
really
audience.
funny podcast. I think that'd be a funny podcast. I would totally do it. I'm here for that.
That could be
by
a
the
show
way-
on IFC, by the way, just backstage
Oh.
stories reenacted by actors.
That's actually really good. You should patent that quickly.
All right. Nobody
you
say
know-
anything about this.
Do you
I'm
want
gonna
my
patent this.
joint? Was that good? Was that good?
Don't say it on a podcast. Whatever you do.
Right.
Do you
I-
want my joint?
Sorry,
I'm just trying to reenact the Stephen Perkins.
Sorry, I've got a back.
Like, you want some of this, or like, it was just gross.
He wasn't flexing while he was doing, was it? Was he like flexing his pecs or anything, or making it
No,
incredibly
he was just-
comfortable?
No, he just thought I was one of his minions. I was not one of his minions.
Did he call it
I
to
was-
anyone named Mercedes or Bambi? Was anyone? Did he do that?
I didn't notice. I was just left. I was sort of just mortified and ran away. But anyway, but one band I want to know about is Verbena, because I've been listening to A.A. Bundy and blown away, and so touched by his music, and I'm wondering. But I loved that band, and I wonder. I think they're one of those ones that probably will never get back together, right?
No, I don't think they will.
Yeah.
So
I
they
was
were like
forgotten.
they were the big buzz band in like the early 2000s, right? Like they were going to be.
It was late '90s.
Was it late
Late
90s?
90s,
Because I
yeah.
saw them at Little Brothers here in Columbus. I don't know if you went to that show, Jay, or not, but I know I went with a couple people, and it was packed. I mean, for a band that had one record out, I don't even know if the record was out yet. It might have just come out. But Little Brothers, which back then held about 400 people. I mean, it was people were standing or sitting on the side rails of the place. It was so packed. I thought they were. Or I remember the buzz was like, this could be the next Nirvana. That's how gritty and then it seemed to like shift immediately to like the Strokes. Like, no, we're gonna go to garage rock, and that's what blew up. It wasn't gonna be there was gonna be a new Nirvana. It was gonna be like there's a new garage band.
But they were
Yeah,
sort of garagey.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure my Chicago friends like Louise turned me on to Verbena because I saw them on the Souls for Sale tour, and there was nobody at Little Brothers for that show.
Yeah, that was the record.
Yeah.
I think Into the Pink was the tour I saw him on.
Yeah.
Then it must have been the second record.
But so I think I was at that show too, and at that show I could tell. I don't know if they all hated each other, but there was definitely a lot of tension on the stage that night.
Yeah.
A lot.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that too. But
And
if you guys haven't heard A.A. Bonda, you should, because it's really incredible.
I was just thinking about Tuscadero for a second. I was how like they kind of had that moment where it was supposed to be the next thing, and then it just went away in like a heartbeat.
Yep.
we reviewed the Tuscadero album, I think, on the first season of the show, the Pink album.
Fantastic.
I don't think we liked it. I'll be honest. I think Jay and I were going with a big expectation, and we were a little let down by some of the songwriting. I think we thought it was a little undercooked.
Well, you're out of your minds. So
okay.
Let's just leave
You're
it
not the first person to tell us that based on a review that we've done, including up into this year.
I'm glad that you've said what you feel, though. That's fantastic. You're wrong, but I'm glad you've said
right.
what you feel.
So let me go. The one band that I don't think will ever get back together, that I would like to see, and I think Louise would second this, is Triple Fast Action.
Oh yeah.
They'll never. I don't think Wes will ever put any music out ever again.
And
And I would
that's
kill-
heartbreaking.
I would kill to see them again.
That's some of the best shows I've ever seen was them.
I will say when they went out with a bang. Their last show, they played every song they'd ever written. So I guess you can't complain too much. But
Is that when they had all of this for sale signs on their gear? That was
Yeah.
so sad.
yes,
Oh God. All right, but I do want to say that Chip, I think you had a hand in reuniting my band, didn't you? You were just like
I
angling
would
on
like to think
Facebook.
so.
Yeah, just like on Facebook, just like tagging me and Nina at the same time all the time. Like I know that you were angling to get us back together and really working it.
Absolutely.
And there was something that you did that gave me pause. What was it? What did you do? What were you orchestrating over there in your little dark corner?
What was it? I had a dream one time that Scott Lucas curated a Chicago reunited festival.
Oh, that's
I
what
don't know
it
if that's what
was.
it was, but it was like it was a very vivid dream. But it was you guys and Local H and Fig Dish and Triple Fast. So
Yeah, you
maybe
were
that's-
dropping.
maybe that's what it was.
That's what it was. You were dropping big hints. I was picking them up, but it was lovely. It was lovely. I know. I really appreciated it, and they came at the right time. Like there would have been a time when I would have crucified you for doing that, but it was the right time, and I think you probably sensed that, and you probably also knew like it's now or never, girls. Like let's do this. Let's make it happen.
I had all my fingers and toes crossed.
I know you did, sweetie.
Way to go, Chip. Good job.
Picturing Chip as like a puppet master.
Yeah, but it
Behind
doesn't
the
work
scenes,
with West
pulling
Kid and Triple
strings.
Fast Action.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it can.
It
Just-
doesn't. I've
You
tried.
just
that
keep
one too.
dropping those Facebook posts, Chip, and eventually it'll work.
Try a different
Hey,
angle.
We've hit the 1 hour mark, which is our typical end time for these roundtables. So I think this is a good point to wrap it up and say thank you to everyone. I want to start with Louise. Thank you so much for taking out some of your time on your Sunday evening to chat with us. We really appreciate it, and we're all looking forward to the new record. I can say that.
Thank you.
And the
Thank you.
And the second episode when we just laugh. Remember?
Yes, in the second episode.
Well, thank you for having me, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure.
And when the new record comes out, you'll come back on and we'll talk about the new record, and we'll go track by track through the whole thing, and you can explain all the songwriting and recording and all that kind of stuff. How's that sound?
That's only if I can bring Nina. Can I bring Nina?
Absolutely.
Okay.
She can meet my Nina, which is 2.5 years old, and
Aw.
we can have a Nina fest.
Cute.
Tom,
That's adorable. It's a deal.
okay, excellent. Tom, thank you for coming on, and we want to remind people they can go to washedupemo.com to listen to your podcast.
And
You've
then
had
also,
some interesting guests on.
can I plug one more thing?
Yes, please do.
If you're wondering if your band is emo or not, you can go to isthisbandemo.com and it'll tell you if it's not. And also there's is this band hardcore, is this band punk, is this band indie, and is this band metal.com if you're wondering. So that's
you are
sort of
the master of Is Your Band. You're like the guy who owns like Christian Singles and Farmers Only and all those dating sites that are segmented. You have that cornered for Is Your Band. That's awesome.
I don't know if I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but yes.
It is. That guy's got like $100 billion.
I have zero, so.
Okay. Well, you need to expand out to like, is your band polka? Is your band klezmer or whatever that word is? Or zydeco or whatever. Cover all the bases. So nobody else can infringe. Okay.
That is next. Thank you very much.
Yes. Chip Midnight. We can find you on Facebook, Stalking Bands, and at kidsinterviewbands.com. Have you done one with Veruca Salt yet?
It has to be in Columbus, so no, not yet.
Okay.
But we'll get them on the next tour, right?
Yes.
You guys are putting her on the spot. You guys are putting her on the spot for two things. Like, should I just do it? Like, should I put her on the spot about anything? Come on.
I'll just
This is the time.
and it'll happen.
Okay. And of course, to my co-host Jay, thanks once again for showing up for the 217th time in a row. I appreciate it.
No problem, Tim.
All right.
When are you guys going to break up and get back together?
I know.
Well, we have that planned out. Around episode 500, we're going to do our breakup.
I actually keep trying to get Tim to do the show without me. He won't do it.
No.
It's the opposite. I'm like, no, you just sit out this one. You'll be good.
I'm like, no, you
I
must
just
be
keep
here.
showing up.
We must talk about every record released in the 90s, all of them, and then we're done. All right.
Deal.
So I want to remind people they can go to iTunes to leave us positive feedback if you enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to request a review, you can head on over to digmeoutpodcast.com to request a review, an album that you would like to hear us review. That's it. Another one in the books. We'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
Join the conversation about this episode at digmeoutpodcast.com, where you can find links to our Facebook page and Twitter feed, as well as links to our request a review and merchandise pages.
Different